What up, Becky? What up, my peeps? Hi, Cheryl with an S. Making changes. What's up? Bob, I'm on. I'm glad you're here. Good afternoon, Noodles Mama. Quizzical Girl. What up? Alright, I'll keep it down. You're at work, Cheryl? God damn, Cheryl, keep it down. Figured today I'd talk a little bit about snowblowers. You know, I was saying the other day, it's that weather. That weather starts turning, and you know, I don't know where everybody lives, but you know, sometimes we get hit with snow. I mean, I can remember as a kid, you know, it'd be snowing around October. You know, Halloween was hit and miss. Cold. You know, you got your costume on, you got your sweatpants underneath, hoodie, all bundled up. The seasons are changing. Let's talk about it. God damn, I was working at Hillcrest Chevy in Salem, and there was an April Fool's blizzard back in like 1998 or 97. Just got out of high school. I worked for Hillcrest through the co-op program, and yeah, I was a line tech there, Chevy dealership. A lot of great people I met through that job. It was like, you know, it was like a family. The guy that owned that company, he owned other dealerships, and it was like a family. It was a good job, I'll tell you. And now it's I believe it's a church, big building. But yeah, April Fool's storm, I'll never forget that shit. Like I said, I was a mechanic, but when I got to Hillcrest, they were moving cars out back. They were moving all the cars off the front lawn, the front line, and man, that day, I'll tell you, I was soaked. I had to jump in a car, move it this over here. Then I'd get out of work and I'd come right here, and I'd put in hours here at night. My father, catch up on machines and stuff. But yeah, the seasons are changing, you know, and you never know what to expect. I'll tell you some crazy shit that's never happened, that's been happening on my front lawn, is when the sun hits my windows in the house, the reflection from the sunlight hitting the grass has been changing it. It's been hot. You know, maybe that's a sign of global warming. Never happened before, but I've noticed it. You know, I'm cutting the grass and I'm saying, God damn, why is there like a perfect square of like yellow? Thinking the dog's out there, you know, drawing lines and shit. But I'm putting it all together. It's like when the sun hits the window, it's reflecting into the grass and it's burning it. So it's crazy. Just letting a couple people get up in here. It's 19 people. We'll kick it off. Hi, Kara. Kara. If I'm saying that right. La, what up? Glad you guys are all showing back up. I'm going to try to stay on top of this. Charlie Kirks. Isn't he like a government speaker or something, or an official speaker? Yeah, we're on black today. Noodles mama, goddamn, really? Yeah, he speaks on a lot of violence, gang violence, stuff like that. I have heard of that guy. That's a shame. He got shot. This is factual. Lincoln, I'm glad you're here 2 days in a row. I'm gonna try to stay on top of this. You know, I got a lot of you know, a lot of things I want to talk about. Maybe can spread a little knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Lynn Dyers, what's up? You know, the heading of my post today was, is your snowblower running? Oh no, is your snowblower ready for the winter? So this is a time of the year that, you know, with the kind of repairs I used to do, it was seasonal. Things would start changing, you know. You'd get around now, you'd get a lot of bagging lawnmowers, commercial grade lawnmowers. You know, when we start to get ready to come into fall, we get a lot of leaves that are falling out of the trees in the backyard and branches, and, you know, so I'd see equipment come in that was, you know, wood chippers, brush cutters, you'd see. God damn, you think it's a little Laconia and shit over here. Everybody can hear me fine, right? Cool. Thanks, Bob. So I'd see a lot of different equipment come into the shop. Wood chippers, brush cutters, bagging lawnmowers. And it would always be around this time where, you know, the seasons are changing. You know, the grass ain't growing. You know, you get that first frost. And that's it. Stuff stops growing, you know. So you got to get ready. You got to be prepared. You know what I mean? You don't want to be... And hey, you know, everybody's got things going on and busy and, you know. But nobody likes shoveling. Especially if you got a snowblower in the garage or you got it in the shed out back. You know, you want to get it out of the shed, get it up front, get it, you know, closer to where you're gonna use it, you know. So the biggest thing with this snow equipment, and I can only stress this enough, is fuel. Now, gas isn't the way it used to be. And when I say that, I mean, let's go back a decade, 10 years. I mean, decade sounds like, you know, it's this big. But, you know, as we get older, we notice the years just fly by. So, gasoline has a lot of additives, you know, and there was a lot of laws that were changed too a decade ago. A lot of gas stations, you probably notice, you see a gas station under construction, you know, those tanks in the ground, they only last so long, you know. And you know, they're due for replacement, or, you know, I'm not too sure of the process, what they do. They might reline them. I'm not too sure. But, you know, in my eyes, they've added, you know, the ethanols and the other, you know, when you look at the gas pump, it's broken down on it. Tells you what the percentage of this is and what the percentage of that is. In my eyes, these are chemicals that can be burnt through your car, but these are chemicals that are used to preserve. And what I mean by that is that it's saving the tanks in the ground. They're trying to get 2 decades, okay? 2 10-year periods that they don't have to go and spend all this money. Believe it. You know, I did a test once with dry gas and isopropylene alcohol, and I wanted to compare the difference in what they do. And I did this in high school. I had a great shop teacher. He ran the whole related class. And, you know, I remember at that time, we kind of broke down what the difference was. And an 8-ounce bottle of dry gas that you could buy at the gas station, you know, to get rid of water, or to dissipate, you know, any kind of condensation that might be, you know, in the fuel. And I want to say a tablespoon of isopropylene alcohol is pretty much the same equivalent as an 8-ounce fluid bottle of dry gas. And what else is in the bottle? You'd be surprised what we're buying. So where I'm going with this is that fuel in a gas can, in the tanks in the ground, in your lawnmower, in your snowblower, in your weed whacker, your chainsaw, you know, there's swelling and expansion and contraction of that tank, and it builds pressure. Maybe the sun's beating on it, the sun beaming through the garage window. You got a shed, you know, you got it inside somewhere, you got it under the front porch. I mean, I don't know where you store the fuel, but condensation will build in a can, especially a small 1-gallon can or a 2-gallon can. And when it comes to a piece of, you know, household garden equipment or snow removal equipment, you know, 90% of the time you're dealing with one cylinder. And what I mean by one cylinder is you got one spark plug, one piston, you know, a separate oil crankcase. You got a fuel tank that's probably not going to hold more than a gallon of gas. Most equipment doesn't hold more than a gallon. And what you get over a period of time of storing these machines is you get a condensation buildup from the swelling and, you know, the contraction of the gas can in the tanks, which creates moisture. Machines won't run off of moisture. You know, some people might say, hey, geez, well, you know, what about my car? Most cars are 4 cylinders. They got 4 spark plugs, or they're a 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder. Very hard to see the interruption from moisture on a car, truck, something with, you know, more than 1 cylinder. So the biggest thing is your fuel when it comes to this equipment. My suggestion to that is keep the least amount of fuel you can. Now, if you fill up if you got a, you know, 4-gallon jug in the garage, or, you know, good size 2-gallon can, you know, and you're cutting your grass every week, or if you're mulching, you know, when you mulch your lawn, you should be cutting twice a week. I don't know if everybody knows that, but, you know, mulching means that you're not putting the grass clippings in a bag. The side discharge means the grass shoots out the side. And when you're mulching, what you're doing is you're cutting the grass. It's staying underneath the machine. There's a bit of a vacuum that gets created by the blade. And what you're doing is you're cutting the grass over and over and over and over and over, and you're letting it fall back down on top of it. When you're mulching, you want to run that machine on slow speed. Not RPM wise, but, you know, when you're pushing it through the grass, you want, you know, to take a step. Let the machine cut, maybe count to 3, take another step. I know it sounds, you know, time consuming, but what you're doing is you're cutting these grass clippings up, and they're falling back down. They're actually making your lawn a lot healthier. So you should be cutting twice a week. Back to the fuel situation, you know, you want to keep the least amount of fuel on site at the house. That way there, you know, you're going back and you know you're getting fresh fuel. A lot of times, you know, I used to service a piece of equipment and deliver it. And I'd say, hey, geez, you know, you had some bad fuel in there. And, you know, the gentleman would say, hey, you know, the fuel is the same fuel that I'm using for my lawnmower. I mean, it's not bad fuel. And what I'd find out is the following year, I'd deliver the snowblower and there'd be 2 cans in the garage. Because what do we do with bad fuel once somebody tells you you got bad fuel? I mean, that's our first. I mean, you can't get rid of it. You can't just, um, pour it somewhere. I mean, that's a no-no. What I would suggest to do with old fuel is to pour it in your car. Get rid of it. Burn it. Use the bigger engine, let's say, to get rid of it. So you don't have to dispose of it, or a lot of places won't take fuel. And like I said, some people might say, well, what do you mean? I'm gonna dump bad fuel in my car? No. You're dealing with a gallon of gas, 2 gallons of gas, and you got a 14-gallon tank in your car. So 90% of the time, we're filling our cars up. So we're diluting what we have, okay? God damn, that was a big bee. He was not this bee, a fucking bumblebee. God damn, it's right there with me. Sees that shit. So when you pour it in your car or your truck, we're filling that vehicle more than you would the lawnmower or the snowblower. Keeping the least amount of gas at home allows you to maintain it. You're filling your machines, okay, that tank's empty. I'm gonna go get some fresh gas. Get another gallon. You might fill your lawnmower for 2 weeks. Go get another gallon. I mean, you don't want to store fuel at the house, which is a big factor, when it comes to the small engines. With the snowblowers, 95% of the time, it's fuel that's created this problem, of why it won't start, and you're panicking. There's gonna be a snowstorm tonight. I've been trying to get it at the repair shop, but they're super busy. I'm on a pickup list for this guy. I got a local guy in town that usually does it, but he's busy. Or hey, this guy ain't doing it no more. So for a little self-maintenance that you can do some upkeep with, you want to upkeep the fuel and maintain it. If you do have a snow blower, over the next couple of weeks, coming into October, I'd tell you to get it out. Get it out. It's funny because over the years of service and equipment, I had some people that, they just wanted me to take care of it. They listen, Kevy Kev, you fixed my machine. It ran super great all winter long. I had no problems. I want you to do it again. It's just a peace of mind. I want the service, okay? Which a good service on a piece of snow equipment is that you wanna go through, flushing the fuel that's left in it out, cleaning the carburetor, replacing the spark plug, okay? You want to check the ignition. A lot of them are solid state. Years ago, when in the late 80s, 90s, you'd see a lot of old Aaron snowblowers, old Toros, Bolins, some old Troy builts with the Briggs motors on them. They had, a pretty unique ignition system, almost like a distributor in a car. They had points and condenser, which would operate your spark at peak points. Now we just have a a lot of equipment is you know, they have a solid state ignition, which is just a magnetic pickup. You got a flywheel with a magnet on it, and it's going by, you know, a coil pack up top, and every time that magnet goes by, that's what generates that spark. You know, it's like those old lighters that you could take apart and hit the button, and you know, you could zap your friend or something. You know, every time you hit that button, every time that magnet goes by, it's firing the spark plug. So you'd want to take, you know, break that down and clean the flywheel, clean that magnetic pickup. A lot of times, you know, I would reset the gap on a magneto to the flywheel. Reason for that is that, you know, when you take the cover apart to clean the magneto or the magnet, you'd notice that there's rust on it. I mean, you got a cast iron flywheel, and cast iron flywheel with a magnet on it. I mean, it rusts up, and rust is just building up on top of something. So you're not, now, you know, the gap that's in between the magneto and the flywheel is changed. You know, it's getting smaller. Most equipment should be around, you know, I don't know how I could explain it to you in simple fashion. Say the thickness of a business card, you know, which is about 18 to 20 thousandths of an inch business card. You know, you're checking the ignition out, making sure you got a good spark, servicing on that equipment. You know, I used to find a lot of people would say, hey, geez, you know, my tires are flat. The tires are losing air pressure. I think something's wrong. It's just, you know, they're not used enough. And then they sit. They sit in a garage or a shed or in the backyard, and you got all the weight of that machine just sitting on two rubber tires, and it, you know, you're not using it. It's not like the car where, you know, you're driving your car and, you know, they're rotating, you're doing 20 miles an hour. I mean, we don't bring the snow equipment or a lawnmower or a riding lawnmower. We don't bring the speeds up to a, you know, a speed that would create friction, you know, and heat off the ground or the hot top. You know, if you notice in with cars, like, you know, in the summertime, you know, if you had a leaky tire or a slow leak, you're not maintaining it as much in the summertime because it's hot, the ground's hot, that tire heats up, swells. Wintertime, you know, everything's cold. It takes a while for that tire to heat up, you know. Same principle with this equipment. I mean, little preventative maintenance on a snowblower when you're storing it. You know, you might be able to just like lift, you know, grab it by the handles, lift it up, maybe slide a block of wood, or maybe stack a couple 2x4s or a 4x4, you know, like a fence post, you know, this corner post here, something thick, you know. Slide it under the bottom pan and, you know, take some weight off those tires. You'll find out next year they'll be full, you know, you'll be ready to go. You know, I can't stress enough the fuel. You know, I really don't. I can't, you know. Fuel is a big factor with a lot of equipment. You know, so if you haven't pulled your snowblower out, you wanna dig it out next couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you know. Or maybe throw a note on the refrigerator, you know? That might help somebody out, you know? You know, you probably a lot of people that got a nice lawn that take pride in it. You'll be cutting to the end of October. And leaves will be falling, you'll be bagging, and you'll know when it's time to you know, get that snow blower out, get it ready. You know, you want to at least know that you're not going to have any issues. What else? Let me check out this chat. You don't have one? You don't have a snowblower, Becky? Catching up on high speed. Glad you made it. Nice. Yay. She's out there shoveling and shit. Got a very small driveway, so it ain't that bad, you know? They got small snow blowers for small driveways. You know? You know, some other little maintenance that you could do is, you know, I notice a lot of things have changed with equipment too. You know, for years, a lot of equipment ran off like the same drive setup, the way it moves forward and backwards. They would keep it pretty standard with a friction plate and a clutch disc. A lot of it now is chain and gear drive. You know, they try to advance the technology, but, you know, in my eyes, they should have stayed with what they had. But a lot of these machines, if you do what I say and you're maintaining the tires with taking a little weight off, you got the machine maybe jacked up so the tires ain't sitting on the ground. The other thing too, what they'll do is when they're sitting on the ground, those tires, they'll create a flat spot. Not that you see it, but then you feel, you just think something's wrong until you're using it. You know, you get halfway through the winter season and you realize the thing ain't, you know, you're going down the driveway and it's doing one of these, you know. It's because every time the tires go around and hit that flat spot it's been sitting on in the garage or in the shed or under the porch until you start using it, you know. Yeah, I learned on a manual transmission as a kid. My mom had a Volkswagen Beetle. It was pretty cool. She liked it. It was fun. She didn't take it out all the time, but she liked them Beetles. It was like, I want to say it was like a 72. It was pretty cool. I learned on that. It was different. VW Rabbit, yeah. Yep, that car was a lot of fun. Fuel is definitely a steepest hill in Beverly. Yeah, it's good to learn you know, how to drive a standard on a hill. You know, a lot involved. That motorcycle, I don't know if you've seen my last slide, but I showed you a motorcycle. It was, you know, a newer model Harley Davidson. CVO edition, but built on in the system of that motorcycle, if the front wheel is inclined on the road at a certain angle, it's got an assisted brake that locks up so the bike won't roll backwards. So if you're on a motorcycle and you're going up gotta make sure schoolwork's all done, homework, you know. I got one that's a cheerleader, man, I'll tell you. It's she loves it. She loves it. I think she's got today off with it though, so she's got a break from it. Where was I? Yeah, with the bike. It's got an assisted like rollback security system, which is crazy, you know. And when we think back, like, you know, from with an old standard vehicle, you know, you pull up a hill and next thing you know, the guy in front of you stops. You know, you're juggling the three pedals, you know, the gas, the brake, the clutch. You're saying to yourself, ah, god damn. But we get through it. We get through it. Cheerleading's crazy. It's a tough sport. Let me tell you. You know, these girls get into it, man. I'll tell you, my daughter, she's been doing it now for about 4 years. And she's on a great team. She's a hard worker. You know, she's dedicated. She listens. She's a good kid. You know, proud of that kid. She did a national. She was placed nationally last year, second place in the nation. Her team. She went out to Florida. You know, they were fighting for first place. Man, they came home with second. But I'll tell you, to get out there, you know, you got to put in the work. You know what I'm saying? Just like everything, you got to put in that work. You got to be dedicated. You know, I'll tell you, the snow equipment though, it's you got to get ready for it. You know, you don't wanna be you don't want to be stuck, you know, and you want to get it out, get that snowblower out, get it in the driveway or get it in the garage, and you know, take the gas cap off, make sure that if you have fuel in it, you try to fire it up. Try to catch it if you can. Now the biggest thing with these machines, when you're gonna try to drag it out of the shed or get it out of the garage and you're getting it out, is when the machine's sitting for a long period of time. A big tip that I could tell you to do is that when you put your equipment away, if you're gonna leave fuel in it, most equipment have a shutoff for the fuel. And if you start the machine up, you shut the fuel off, okay? And you let the machine run till it runs out of gas. That means it's going to eat up all the fuel that's in the carburetor, that's connected to the block, the side of the motor, the most closest thing to getting the machine to start. Remember, you got a gas tank over here, and you got a long fuel line that's going across to the other side of the machine, internally or through the covers. So you got a fuel tank that's trying to deliver fuel across the way to a carburetor. Well, if you shut that fuel off and you run the machine so that carburetor is empty, it's you know, that following year when you turn the fuel on, it's ready. It's gonna deliver. It doesn't have something that might get gummed up or you know, a lot of these equipments, the carburetors have a float and a bowl that regulate how much fuel goes into the carburetor. And you know, when I say float, it's literally like a float. I should have some stuff out here, but you know, inside the carburetor, you know, you got this a float. It's usually brass, but it's gonna look like something like this. And as the machine's running, and eating the gas that's inside, there's a cup. Let's say it's like this. So this is going over this, and this fills up with fuel. And when you're running it and using it, it's eating the gas. It's eating the gas, and it's bending down because it's eating the gas. And the tank over here is filling this cup back up and bringing this up. So when you shut the machine off and you're running it and you shut the machine off, you know, by the kill switch, that gas is still turned on. It's filling this cup up, and this thing here, the float, raises up and shuts it off. Shuts a little pin off inside the carburetor. And where I'm getting with this is when you, at the end of the year, if you shut the fuel off at the tank and you're running the machine and you let it run out of gas, this float's going to drop all the way down, and it's going to stay down. It's going to stay open for when you turn that fuel on and the gas starts traveling through the fuel line. It's going to go right into the carburetor and start to fill that bowl back up. Now, if you leave gas in there and you don't shut it off here, this float's going to stay up. Good 90% of the time, it starts to varnish up. It starts to get a little gummy because there's just gas sitting in there. And a lot of these additives, like in the beginning of this talk, this shop talk here, I was talking about the additives and why they're there to get rid of, you know, moisture and condensation. Well, all those additives, they dissipate, and they gum up. So now you got a sticky float that's not allowing it to let fuel into the carburetor because gas been sitting in there the whole time. That's a little trick I like to tell people, is to shut that fuel off at the tank when you're putting it away. Let the carburetor run dry and sit like that the whole summer. You got no gas in the carburetor. It's clean. It burnt it all up. It ran good all last year. You didn't have a sputtering problem. You didn't have a skipping problem. That following year, you're going to turn that fuel on. It's going to fill that, you know, that good running carburetor back up, and you're going to be off and running. Same for the lawnmower. Same for the lawnmower. Yes. You know, run it. A lawnmower, see, there's mixed opinions on storage. Now, I've been working on this kind of equipment my whole life. What I could tell you is to store your machine with no fuel in it at all. No sense. Some people say, "Oh, you know, I put a treatment in there. I put a, you know, I put a treatment in there, or I keep a Finch tablet." They have these little things called Finch, and it's a little atomizer that you can buy at a automotive store to drop inside a tank to, you know, spark the atoms and keep things fresh. But, you know, people will say to store a tank full. My best, you know, piece of knowledge I could give you is to in my eyes, you know, you want to store a piece of equipment empty. That way next year, you know, it's clear in your head. There's no fuel in it. There was no chance of moisture and condensation building in there. The gas didn't go bad and get all gummy. And when I say gummy, well, I mean we're gonna break a carburetor down on one of these episodes. I got one. I was reading some of the comments last night. You know, about a recoil. I'm setting that up. Recoils are the rope. They tend to break. I'm setting that up to have a good little talk about that. We'll repair one. We'll put a new rope in one while we're talking about it too. That'll be a great one, because that's a very common thing that happens, you know. And you want to use the right line. You want to use a nylon corded line. I've seen stuff with sneaker lacings in it, knots tied. I've seen clothesline. You name it. I mean, I've seen all kinds of different materials of rope that have been used over the years from different people. Just, you know, trying to get a picture. If it, you know, if it's blizzarding out and you need to get your machine running, and you're that handy to you know, rip some lacings out of your Chippewas or something and wrap it in there and get it in there, do it. I'd do it. Shit, I'd get home. I'll tell you a quick story. You can use sneaker lacing if your water pump belt broke on your car. Get you home. I did. I mean, I had to buy myself new lacings and my buddy in the back seat, but we got home. You know? The other big thing that we could touch upon real quick is shear pins. Shear pins for the front of the machine. Most auger setups, and that's what it's called, is an auger. It draws the fuel into that bucket. I mean, the snow into that bucket. Most machines a two-stage, and what the two-stage means is you got the bucket with the augers, the tines in the front, that are potting the snow to the middle of that bucket and pushing it back. That's why they're spiraled like that. And the second stage is the fan that's in the back of that auger, which projects the snow out the chute. So you got pins that are on that shaft that go to that fan, and you got shear pins that are in the front on those tines. Now those tines can hit, you know, a curbside. You might have a rough, you know, not every driveway is level. You could have a gravel driveway. You could have cobblestone. You could have a brick driveway. You could hit a dog chain. You could hit a newspaper. You know, it's fucking snowing. You didn't shovel your fucking driveway. You didn't shovel your walkway. You got fucking little Billy riding up the street with his fucking paper route, saying to myself, God damn, they didn't even fucking shovel. So what's little Billy do? He throws your fucking newspaper. Now it's in the fucking walkway. And you go out there and you think you're fucking, you know, fucking big snowblower. I'm gonna fucking blow snow everywhere. Got a fucking neighbor next door that fucking they're always bitching. I'm gonna put it on his grass. Maybe I'll fill his fucking driveway up. You don't know. You don't know what's under that snow. And then you break a fucking shear pin. Now you're like, what the fuck? Why is this thing clogging up? Why ain't there any snow coming out the chute? God damn. You know, you go into the garage and you're fucking looking around. You're opening up all the drawers. And you're like, Jesus Christ. All of a sudden you find that drawer that's got some hardware in it. And you got these two copper bolts that went to the, you know, the toilet. You can't use copper, they're too soft. Then you're looking around and you got these two big wood bolts, these quarter 20, you know, aggressive thread wood shanks. You can't use them either. A shear pin speaks for itself. Shear pin. And I don't mean share it with your fucking neighbor, because they're about $4 a fucking piece. What you gotta do is get these shear pins. And what I mean by shear is it's made to shear. It's made to break. It's a safety. So you want to build. You want to get enough of them. You know, usually there's 4 in the front. A lot of these newer models, there's a multitude of them. You know, I've seen some different models. I mean, Cub Cadet puts out this front end that's got, you know, 4 separate augers, two separate fans. You want to stock up on the shear pins. You don't want to use a regular bolt. The reason why they're called shear pins is that front end of that snowblower is ran off of these big brass gears that are in that housing in the front. There's an aluminum housing or a cast iron housing. Those gears inside are brass. And the shaft that goes to that fan is hardened steel. So you got a hardened steel shaft with some corked screw threads at the end of it that are broached into that shaft. And they're sitting on top of a brass gear, turning the augers out front. And when you put a shear pin inside those augers and you hit something and it stops, and now you only got one side working, if you had a solid bolt in there, it's gonna fucking break the brass gears in the front. Now you're gonna be able to fucking, snowblower. You're gonna have to order a new gearbox. And that can get pricey. Shear pins are a big factor with equipment. You want to make sure that you stock up on them. They're a needed accessory to the machine, and you want to get the right ones. The off season is when you see them. Sometimes you'll notice hardware stores, they won't stock up on them. And I'm going to tell you something. When it's snowing out, the price goes up. They start to get, in demand. They start to get scarce. A lot of stores start running out of them. Like they don't have them for, they're not up for grabs at the store. You're hitting the hardware store saying, hey, got any shear pins for bowlings? Nah, man, I sold out. You go to Home Depot, you're looking through the box, you're like, Jesus Christ, where's all the shear pins? Fucking somebody else bought them all. So shear pins are a big factor. You want to make sure that you stock up on your shear pins. It's saving on the I mean, I used to try to explain this to people. The shear pins, the front end of the machine, that's like two guys shoveling. I mean, do you really want to interrupt that or ruin that? I mean, think about it. You're sitting there walking behind your snowblower and you're going through the yard, going down the driveway. That's like having two guys or two women out there shoveling, shoveling their ass off. Get the shear pins. Let's talk about oil real quick. When you have, oil in a snowblower, it's not like a car or your truck or your motorcycle or your dirt bike, okay? We're not talking miles. We're talking hours. We're talking hours. And you got to justify how long it takes for you to snowblow your front yard or your driveway or the walkway. Maybe you got a corner lot and you're going down the sidewalk and then you're taking a right and you got a football length of sidewalk over there to do. All right? You're putting hours. You calculate that shit. Good snowstorm, rough snow out there. You got 3 or 4 inches. You got your snow blower out. How many times did it snow that winter? How many times did you use it? I would suggest to change your snowblower, the oil in your snowblower, maybe 8 to 10 hours, or every season. If you're bringing it somewhere and getting it serviced, they're gonna change the oil, and in your head, hey, I got good oil in there. You know, it's crazy. But sometimes people don't think of that. You think, oh shit, should I change my oil? Our car, we justify maybe every 3,000 miles we should change the oil. Some people do it, less. People that are maintaining their cars and their equipment, they might have a different regimen. They might say, oh no, every 15,000. Every 1,500 miles, I'm changing my oil. I want to make sure I got new oil in there. The oil's a big factor. If we get 3 snowstorms a year, or 3 snowstorms this year, and you have to go out and use your snowblower, and you go out and use it for 15 minutes, are you really putting a beating on that oil? If we get 10 snowstorms and we're using it every week, for 2 months, and you got, it's an hour and a half every time you're out there, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to change the oil at the end of the year, because you got a good 10 hours on, almost 11 hours. You're doing the math. Sometimes we just say, hey, you know what? The machine's a shitbox. I'm going to use it until it dies, and then I'm going to buy another one. That's what happened to me with a lot of lawn equipment. You offer a service that you do a good job, a thorough job. You're going through it. You're giving somebody a peace of mind. They know, hey, geez, I brought it down to the guy down the shop. He took care of it. It's gonna be good. It's gonna run good. I bring it to this guy every year. I never have a problem. And now you get a couple years go by, and you're noticing all the lawnmowers at Home Depot, $95. Shit, I'll wait till Father's Day. I'll get it for 80. Get it for $89.99 on Father's Day. Get a nice one. All right? But next year, you're gonna have to do the same thing, because now all these lawnmowers that we're buying for the $90, they're all plastic. Everything's plastic. It's not worth to get it serviced, because I'll tell you, if you do a little calling around, it's not cheap, especially if someone's putting in the work. Anybody could say, hey man, I changed your spark plug, and you're good to go. Let me wipe down the handles a little bit. But products and prices, this is the world we live in. So yeah, electric is great too. I'm all for electric. I used to shop in a lot of electric equipment. The blades still need sharpening. Electric lawnmowers, a lot of upkeep with them is making sure underneath is clean. You don't have grass that's, stuck to the sides of the machine under there. You want to maintain your blades. Make sure they're sharp. You know, the biggest thing too with lawn equipment, biggest thing with the lawn equipment is, you know, I'm not directing this towards anybody, but some people, you know, they'll cut when the grass is a little damp, and that does a lot of damage to a lawnmower. You know, the grass, you know, um, wet grass will stick underneath, stick all over the blade. You'll get build up on your blade. You'll notice that the machine feels funny. It's vibrating because it's throwing the blade off balance because you got a thick clump of grass that got stuck on one side. So let me see. I'm gonna check out the chat. I see some stuff rolling up. If anybody got any questions, you know, hope everybody had a good day today. I don't know, it's a little earlier than yesterday's live, but maybe you're driving home from work, or you know, you got the phone on the seat and you're listening. Kevy Kev said hi. You know, I'd like to I'll do a live on you know, nice recoil, you know. Good day today? Great, I'm glad. Let me see here. Storing my grandfather's snowblower. My brother told me never to get rid of it. Yeah, don't get rid of it. Can you sharpen your blades at home? And do you have to take them, or do you have to take them to be done? That's a great question. You know, when you're talking about sharpening a lawnmower blade, they do sell home kits to sharpen them. There's a little mechanism for the balancing of it. You have to balance these blades. If you don't balance them properly, they'll vibrate. The machine will vibrate. You're gonna feel it in your hands. Your hands will go numb. You ain't gonna like it. And you're gonna get sick of that, you know. I've seen these kits where you can, you know, you go online, you can go on, you know, Amazon. You can get a lawnmower blade sharpener. They sell them. There's only one way the blade goes on. It's very important that if you take a blade off your machine, that you put it on your machine the right way. Now, if it's something that you're going to tackle, or you're going to try to sharpen your own lawnmower blade, we're going to talk a little bit about safety. Okay? Anytime you're working on a piece of lawn equipment and you're gonna approach the undercarriage of that machine, meaning the blade, or you're gonna flip this any kind of machine to its side, you got two major things you got to worry about. All right? Actually, we're going to talk about three things. Usually your carburetor is on the left side, could be on the right side. Okay? When you flip your machine up, or you flip it onto its side, you don't want to flip it, you know, all the way so it's like touching the ground. You want to flip that machine. I hate using the cigarettes, but you want to flip that machine. You don't want to flip the machine like this, so the handles are just sitting there. You want to flip that machine so it's like this here. I know it sounds crazy, but you're going to take the blade off, you're going to lay the machine back down. You don't want to leave the machine sitting like this. And number one, you got that carburetor. You want to make sure the carburetor is facing the sky. So you're going to look, you're going to tilt it. That's right, Bob. If you're tilting the machine to one side, you want to make sure the carburetor and the air cleaner are going to be facing up. If the carburetor's over here on this side and you flip it up like this, all your oil and gas is going to start coming out of the carburetor. It's going to start filling up your air cleaner, and you won't be able to start the machine after you lay it back down. So if you go with that process of the carburetor facing the sky, you flip it to its side, not fully over, but you just got it on a little bit of an angle. You're going to want to make sure you take the spark plug right out of the machine. Okay? And you're going to want to use some gloves. You're going to want to use some gloves. And you're going to have to secure the blade to take the bolt off. It's something that you want to make sure, like I said, you properly set yourself up before you do this. You're going to want to make sure you got, a ratchet, a deep socket. Okay, what I mean by deep socket is you can get a socket that's shallow, or you could get a socket that's long. You want to keep your hands further away from the blade. And you're going to want to take that bolt right out. Now that bolt's going to, it's going to have a lock washer on it. 90% of the time it's got a blade washer. It's called a blade washer, which locks onto the blade. There might be two holes, and that blade wash is going to have it's two tabs on it to lock into the blade. The blade has to go on the same way. If you got a crayon or a black magic mark, a nice Sharpie, you want to write the word out, O-U-T, right on the blade, so you know it's facing you. When you put it back on, that's what's facing the ground. Or you could write ground, whatever's your preference. Writing with a pen, marker or a piece of chalk or a crayon ain't gonna do nothing. It ain't gonna bother the blade, but it's gonna give you that reference in your head that, all right, I'm looking at the blade. I was able to, you're not gonna write on the back of the blade. All right, I wrote, out or ground, right on the blade. That way, when you bring it to the bench, or you sharpen it and you go and put it back on, if you don't mark it and you got it in your hand and you flip it around, you're gonna say to yourself, shit, which way did I take that off? %90 of the time, when you do take the blade off, if you hold the blade in your hand and you're flipping it over, you might see an impression from where it was mounted. which is a good reference for you too. Um, it's almost like a match game. You might see, if it's a hub, if it's a round hub on the end of the crankshaft, and you put your blade on it. When you take your blade off, you might see that round circle from where it was mounted, which is a good reference too. But now you got the blade off, and you got a sharpening tool, whatever the tool might be, whether it's a benchtop model. You could sharpen it with a Dremel. I mean, those are home tools that a lot of people have. Small little Dremel kit. You could, hit each side of the blade with that, till you feel it's sharp enough, and you want to put it on a balancer. A balancer is going to be like a stepped cone. It's just going to be a cone. And once you put the cone, the blade on the cone, the blade's gonna, if it's heavy on one side, it's gonna float. Usually it'll stop, and then you grind a little bit more off of this side on the bench. God damn, did I just freeze up? Got it on the balancer, and you're taking more material off of one side. That balance is gonna bend the blade like that, and then when you're done sharpening it, you wanna maybe just double check your mental notes. If you did any marking on the blade, putting it back on, you want to make sure it's on the right way, and you want to make sure that bolt is tight. When I service a machine, I use an impact gun. I've done it with wrenches. I've done it with ratchets. It can be done, at home. You just want to be, you want to be safe about, tightening it up, putting it on the proper way. It's very important. It's very important. What else? We got anybody else out there? That was a good question. I've sharpened a lot of lawnmower blades. I can remember there'd be, we'll do an episode. I'll sharpen R.I.P. R.I.P. Charlie. He was a speaker. He spoke on a lot of violence and stuff like that, gang violence. He lost his life today. Speaking on stuff. Sad. What's this world coming to, Charlie Kirk. He was a big, he had a big influencing voice that we lost today. Becky G, yeah, throw up some prayers for Charlie. You know, we could say a prayer for Charlie. We could say a prayer for Charlie. Always say a prayer for Charlie. Give him an Our Father, you know. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen, Charlie. Sad, you know. Sad to hear that, you know, people like that, influences, you know, people that are speaking on what's going on in this world, you know, you know, people that stand up to all these challenges, you know, become the target. And I don't get that, you know. I just don't get it. You know. You know, somebody that's out there, you know, pushing knowledge to make a change, you know. And he was young, you know. He was young. He grew up and he grew up with them around him, and you know, he's looking to speak on things and make a change. And it's just too bad, you know. Little Miss Red Velvet, there was a, you know, we had a, you know, Charlie Kirk. He lost his life today. He was a big influential speaker on violence and gang violence, and, you know, he lost his life today. You know, I believe he was speaking as well. It was, you know, it was a, you know, at a conference, or you know, it was, and almost, I think it was publicly. Happened in your town, Joanne? Joanne, I'm sorry that you know, that it's heartbreaking. You know, he was shot. He was shot in the neck, and you know, devastating. You know, they'll probably, you know, that video probably won't be, you know, seen right away, but taken down. It was pretty violent, you know. So he was at Utah Valley University here in Utah. They took him to the University of Utah hospital, and he was pronounced deceased. And it was crazy. Hey, good to see you guys. Mark's Box, he's there. So, yeah, he was 31 years old. Sad. So, crazy. Well, listen, it's been real. You know, I think we covered a lot of stuff with the lawn equipment and the snowblower equipment. I'm glad we acknowledged Charlie, and you know, we're gonna have to tune in next time. We got a lot to go over with this equipment. This won't be the last video on a snowblower breakdown. We're gonna do a recoil for somebody in the chat. The last live I did, somebody spoke up about a recoil, which is a very common thing, and we're gonna get into that. And maybe we'll sharpen a lawnmower blade, balance it. It'd be great. So listen, tune in next time. This is Kevy Kev 781. Thank you for all the subscribers. Smash the like button. Probably see you guys again on a flight. Shout out to JFK. Shout out to James Jackson. See you then. Bye, people.